Welcome to our YouTube channel here for Awakening Together. If you'd like more information on our non-dual community, please visit us at awakening-together.org. This installment is our Satsang that we had in June of 2023 with Mary Reed. She was interviewed by Blanchard. You can find out more information about Mary Reed on our website, lovemaryreed.com. Enjoy the Satsang.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Sina, and welcome everyone. And it is, if you have Mary Reed in the house, it is always time for Mary Reed. So I would ask you to spotlight her immediately. I am utterly overjoyed. Mary Reed was in my living room in New Jersey last weekend, and she is in all of our hearts right here, right now. I'm down in Florida helping out my mom, so I wasn't able to join her last weekend. But I am overjoyed that I'm able to be with my friend right now. Let me make you big, Mary, though. Let me see. How do I do that? Speaker? There we go. Okay, there we go. All right. Well, first, I just want to say welcome, and I want to say thank you.
Hey.
Hey, namaste,
So
namaste.
Namaste,
Come
friends.
on.
Really great to see all you. And Jacqueline, I see you up there, hon. It's nice to see you. Nice to meet folks that I've never met before. It's lovely to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. And thank you to my community that has joined as well. I love that everybody is here.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I notice. So the community Mary talks about, we'll just say this right off the bat, is Sunday nights. She has a Patreon community that she gets together with every week. And I used to be a member of that community until Regina started teaching on Sunday nights, and then the universe had me switch. But what a gift that is, and thank you all for being here. So we're here to talk about a lot of things, but one of the things we're here to talk about is Mary's epic tome, Humanity's Epic Awakening. It's such a, I was saying when we did a little breakout room beforehand, this is such a gift. This is just a gift. For anyone whose heart has been called to this path. This is not only an overview and a map, but it is the gasoline to put in the engine that has our heart say yes, and it walks us through not only the what to do, but it walks us through why. Like why are things looking the way they are? Why is perhaps our pattern still playing out? And from that we can kind of step back into the what. And then, and there's even how in here. So we'll get to all that. But Mary, let's start with you. Your community already knows this, but some of ours does not. So we'll just start from the beginning. You were an avowed agnostic. And I knew what that word meant. I looked it up because we do that. Okay. So this is so great for all of you that know Mary as well as you do. Agnostic means a person who believes nothing is known or believes nothing can be known about the existence of God or the nature of God. That's what an agnostic is.
Well, in truth, I just didn't care if there was a God. That's the basic truth. Whether we could believe it or not, I just never really thought about it. It wasn't a part of my life. I was in clinical research in respiratory medicine and AIDS. I was doing sciencey things, and I just never thought about it.
Yes.
I didn't have big questions about life.
Right. It didn't have some very, I mean, not to take away from anyone who had a special relationship with any famous symbol like Jesus or Buddha, but you didn't grow up thinking, yeah, that's my man. You just grew up going, I love when you say, I just wanted to be like the path of your life was, I want to be successfully normal. So just tell us a little bit about how that played out, and then when that kind of hit the skids, if you will.
Yeah, so I will say, though, that when I was a little kid, so I grew up around New Mexico, a lot of Southern Baptists, and I somehow could always feel Jesus in my heart. Like it was just very clear that there was this goodness in my heart that I knew for some reason was Jesus. And I never understood why people went to church to learn about Jesus. And then they would come home from church and they'd just be so judgmental and talking about sin and all this stuff. And it just was like, this is very, very confusing. And then eventually all of that just sort of, the world drowned out that Jesus that was in my heart. And I went on and just forgot all about it. So in the summer of 2000, while I was being successfully normal in clinical research, I started hearing a voice, and it was just this vibration that rose up in me that said I was supposed to be doing something very important, which I already thought I was. So I tried to ignore it, and it just kept getting more persistent and more pronounced. And then after 6 months of that voice, there was a series of events that led me to need to find out what was happening to me, because that voice was being relentless. And so I went to see a psychotherapist friend in Little Rock, Arkansas, to get some help with this. And that was December of 2000. I went into the body and being of Jesus on the cross at the moment of crucifixion. And then I learned all of this stuff in an instant about how humanity has evolved, what led to that moment, all the dynamics at play, what happened after that that are still in play today. And then that experience went on for 3.5 hours. And then the next day, I went back into the divine realms, had a big ass meeting with Moses this time about something different about the conflict nature of our world. So I got the Old Testament and the New Testament sort of, together in one weekend. I remember, agnostic. So my world was really like, what in the hell is happening? So I had to go back to DC then and try to be normal again. And it was like, oh, now I have a really mixed up internal and external world. And then I started just having these experiences, spontaneously on my own again and again. And they were of all different kinds of experiences. And I could never figure out what was happening. And so I kept trying to get help with therapists and eventually allopathic doctors and Reiki practitioners and all kinds of people to figure out what's happening to me. Why is all of this going on? And how do I process it? But most importantly, what do I do with it? What does one do with all of this really weighty, profound, extraordinary understanding and information, especially because I don't have community. I don't have religious language. I don't have people that I can turn to. So nobody could help me. None of the therapists had the skills to work with somebody like me. And I wandered around really confused and lost for 10 very weighty, difficult, challenging years. And then in the 10th year of struggling with these two discordant worlds that I was living in, my normal world fell apart. All of the things that I was successful in, my job, my home, my money, relationship, just all the normal things of life, it just cracked. It's like the eggs just dropped. And there was no way that I could put anything back together, no matter how hard I tried. And all the while, that spiritual stuff is just pushing harder and harder and harder. So finally, it all just tipped my world upside down, and it ended up in a very serious suicide attempt in March of 2011. And I took 97 prescription pain and sleeping pills with 3 glasses of wine. And I laid down, I said my prayers, and just thought that was it. And then 2 days later, I just woke up. I woke up entirely on my own. I woke up very sick. I woke up with no ability to control my motor skills, but I was alive. But I still woke up in the same 2 worlds that I went to sleep in. So it was only then, finally, in my really extreme state of defeat, that I quit. I just surrendered in the most supreme way possible. I stopped trying to figure it out. I stopped any idea about being normal. I stopped trying to make a plan. I stopped trying to find help. And I remember sitting on my couch, really, really sick, and I was looking out the window, and I just said, God, you can see I have no idea what I'm doing. So if there's something you all need me to do, then you're going to have to lead the way. I can't be the project manager for my life anymore. I quit. And then all the doors just started opening up to this mystical journey, and I just allowed it to happen. And within 6 months of that suicide attempt, I was invited to India to meet with a high Tibetan Lama to tell him about my experiences. I was invited to stay, and I ended up living in a Buddhist nunnery in the Himalayas for the next several years. So I finally had time to just stop everything and allow it all to start integrating, allow me to understand who I am, what's happening through me, so what my real path is, what I'm doing here, all of that sort of stuff. So that's how it all led to this mystic path.
This mystic path. Yeah, it's what I love about like learning about your story was even when it was still a total shit show, you've described that it was the work real life that was the heavy, complicated, never felt right. But when you were in those other realms, it felt lighter, it was more beautiful, it was more vibrant, it made sense. So even when it was still really conflictual, there was such a contrast that you can, yeah.
You know, people who have, I'm sure if you've ever heard near-death experience accounts, they always say it feels more real there than this does. And that's always how it felt. It was not only easier and more compassionate, and in an instant you could learn all kinds of things, and quite magical in that way, but it just felt natural and completely easy and real. And then you come back here into this very tight body, and the dynamics of our world don't feel right. They don't, of course, they go against our nature, right? They don't feel equal. They feel oppressive. They feel, we have to earn our way in this world. There's all kinds of things that don't make sense to us. So those other realms always, and still do, make more sense to me than here. I mean, this is all now making sense because I've been given the information to how to see this, but yeah, it's always been very clear to me that was home, that is our natural state.
Yeah, our natural, I love that, our natural state. So just to give anyone who doesn't know the overview, Mary wrote a first book called Unwitting Mystic, where she tells much more of the story that she's telling now. But then each chapter, so there'll be a chapter of life and the way it's hitting, and then there's a chapter that brings you right into one of these mystical experiences. So you get the split screen in her first book, Unwitting Mystic.
Let me just say, I did that
Sure.
because I have what's going on in my private life or personal life, and then a metaphysical event, and then personal life and a metaphysical event. So the reader gets to start carrying all of this with me to understand what it's like to have this volume of stuff going on within me that is just getting bigger and bigger, and I'm just getting more confused and more confused, and there's a level of devastation and eventually some comprehension that starts to happen in that book, that I think people can really resonate with that. I think that's why people like that book so much.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a journey. And you do such a good job just letting us right in the ground floor of that. So the second book that Mary wrote is called Divine Being, and that's a book that has our true self, these channeled teachings that really come in and just orient one to what the truth is. And it's a whole book of that, which is amazing. And we're not here. Go ahead.
Let me just say that those channeled teachings. So let me just give you an idea of the kinds of experiences that happen. We're gonna talk in more detail about some of them, I'm sure, but to give you an idea of how my metaphysical experiences happen. From the very beginning, it has been like, you can imagine a blackboard that has a lesson written on it, a spiritual lesson or something to understand. But instead of looking at the blackboard to understand the lesson, I enter into the blackboard and become the lesson itself. So I fully embody all of the wisdom, all of the perspective, the information itself. So it's a fully embodied experience of the wisdom. But in 2020, 2 weeks into the pandemic, I was in a co-meditation with my friend and co-teacher in Australia. And during the meditation, something just started like pulling on my throat for me to yield. And then this huge arena of divine beings came forward as guides, and I began to channel them. And in this stadium, this arena of these divine beings, it's like a tuning fork gets hit. And then there's this resonant vibration that goes out until it becomes a consensus vibration. And then that's what I begin to narrate. So the group is called Consensus. And they started giving all of these incredible teachings. And they eventually came out with a full 7 months of these teachings. And those teachings are called the Divine New Being course. And the text of those live recorded teachings is that second book, Divine New Being.
Yes, which is its own amazing journey. And so all of that to get us right here, which is this is the latest. And I mean, in some way, I mean, it draws on both of the books, but it stands alone and goes for me much further and actually actually starts to pull the threads, make the connections, and really digests it. Pre-digest. I feel like it's a mother bird who like pre-digests it and then hands it to the baby. I feel like each chapter is just, I know that's kind of gross, sorry, but I mean, it's just enough that I can eat it and I can get nourished from it. And it's really such a gift. So let me just orient people. So again, this is Humanity's Epic Awakening. So the book is broken down into 3 parts. One is where we, not where Mary's been, where we have been,
Where humanity has been.
where humanity has been, where the consciousness, where the mindset of humanity has been. And so the first section is where we have been. And we're going to spend some time talking about that in just a moment. And then there's a section on where we are. And then there's a section on where we're going. So we're gonna intend to hit all 3 tonight.
Yes, and let me just say, the
Yeah.
reason why it's broken down like that is because I've embodied that entire continuum. Literally the origins of the first moment of waking up into existence, in the God source, all the way into all of part 3 is on what we're waking up into, and almost all of it is related to the things that are ending. So I've embodied all of these endings, and I describe this in the book as it's like the light of a new star, that light takes a long time before it comes into our awareness. And for whatever reason, I have experiences on the edge of where that experience is, that divine light is coming into our awareness. So I'm telling you what I've experienced about what we're going to be coming into. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I love that about it just takes a while, honey, for the light to get to you. If you wonder why you're in and out of the light and into the light, it's still working its way to you. Mm-hmm. You meaning, of course, all of us. Mm-hmm. So let me just have you jump right in. My first note is on page 6. Let me turn to that. Okay. So I read a little bit this morning when I did the announcement for this program from this, but this is page 4. I'll just read a little bit and then ask you to jump in.
Okay.
The hallmark. You have it. You have it in front of you.
Yeah, you want me to read it?
Yeah. Maybe you can read top of page 4. Thank you.
The hallmark of the transformation at hand is direct with source experiences that allow us to transcend old beliefs we've been taught through societal, cultural, and religious conditioning. We're beginning now to embody or connect directly with divine wisdom and understanding to realize fundamental truths about ourselves, reality, and God. And let me interrupt you, if you let me. If you go to the next paragraph and start with these direct with source experiences. Okay. Yeah. These direct with source experiences continue to increase throughout humanity as the momentum of our spiritual awakening accelerates, because what we're waking up into is the remembrance of what we really are, indeed what all of life is, which is God itself in expression. We embody the knowing, the living truth that we have never been separate from God. The very words you read in this moment are of God, as are the eyes that read them, the hands that wrote them, and the book or device conveying them. Supplier, supplied, and supplied to. God, God, and God. Supplier, supply, and supplied. And the definition that we have here in Awakening Together for God, for love, is spirit giving to spirit, through spirit, what spirit requested. God, and God requested, and that requested is very innocent. We are constantly making requests as the consciousness that we are. And what this book allowed me to see is it shined a brighter light onto what I'm unknowingly, innocently requesting by continuing to not see
how I am kind of being co-opted by this mindset that humanity has had. So so the crux of what this leads me to is to have you talk about, and you say it so beautifully, the incredible burden of fear our precious minds have carried in feeling, one, alone, and two, responsible. Responsible for what? For figuring out how to make it on our own. And it's just an incredible burden. And maybe I can get you to talk about that a little bit.
You know, all of my teachings and all of Consensus's teachings are deeply based in compassion and embrace of everything. And they talk often about, and I talk often about, you know, our work is about relieving the burden of these things that have carried all of this pain and this suffering in us. And it is the fear, it is our shame and anger and all of these pieces that make us feel and believe that we're separate from God. And so we continually ask fear to guide us, to try to make us safe, to try to figure it all out, to try to fix it. And look how hard of a challenge that is in a world that is based in fear, right? In a world that believes we're separate from God, we keep demanding that fear try to fix everything. And so my work and Consensus's work and this book is deeply based in compassionate relief of that burden for fear. So many teachings try to, and a lot of part one talks about how we have a history of trying to conquer our fear, trying to overcome things, trying to do all of this, you know, dominating stuff. And all that does is just add more burden to our fear. It continues to keep us in a mindset of rejecting part of us rather than embracing that which is deeply, desperately seeking embrace.
Yeah, and longing for that embrace, which is kind of the pain of the heart that wants to love what it loves, which is everything, and being told it can't. Yeah. I have page 28 and 29, and this kind of jumps right into an experience. But maybe if you can start reading it, understanding all of this, and just for our listeners, all of this, as Mary in the book goes through this whole experience she just had. But right on page 28, where it says understanding all of this, you kind of crux to the knowing that is coming through you.
Yeah, you know, do you mind if I want to read the first paragraph of chapter 1?
Oh, great. Yeah.
Because I think that people are always really eager to hear about where we are and where we're going.
Yeah.
And like, there's an assumption that we know where we've been. And believe me, you haven't heard the version of where we've been that I talk about in part 1 here. But I want to read why it's important that we look at where we've been. Humanity's awakening is both an exciting creative momentum and an inevitably destructive one. But before we can step confidently into our full creative potential, we first have to realize what is being transformed in us and in the collective consciousness we inherited. Without that understanding, we remain blind to how we perpetuate the patterns of our mind that block us from rising to the greater potential of our heart. To put that another way, we have to see the truth of what has been operating in the world we created in fear before we can harness the full scale of our divine potential to create a world in love. Inherited aspects of our evolution are fascinating and richly nuanced from the divine vantage point, and that perspective can help us truly honor, rather than ignore, the burden humanity has carried in our collective grief and guilt. We're releasing that burden now at an ever accelerating rate, which is why our journey feels in many ways lighter as we progress, even amidst the confusion. Every single one of us heals and transforms our past in the present moment when we honor our truths.
Wow.
So we need to understand where we've been so that we don't keep repeating those patterns. All right, you want me to read something from the Mechanism of Creation chapter?
Yes, on 28. But yes, thank you. I have in what you just read, what I wrote, the note I wrote to myself in the margin is the blind bind we are in. We are blind to it and it binds us, and we're blind to it and we're bind. Yeah. So thank you for reading that.
Yeah. I talk a lot in here about the being stuck in the cycle of suffering without realizing that A, it's a cycle, and B, that we're stuck. Right? So just recognizing all of that. What would you like me to read, hon?
Understanding all of this on page 28.
Well, there's a context there because I'm talking about patterns. That one's going to be very hard to.
Well, does it help to give us the crux? You go through this experience, you're brought through this metaphysical experience, and there's this truth that comes kind of flaming up kind of in you and as you. But I am so happy to trust your sense of this.
Yeah. Okay. So let me just tell you about my experience of the first moment of our origin. I'm in this primordial ground, this beautiful, exquisite, vast black void. And I am both in it and as it, but it's nothing. And I'm just awareness, and I'm aware in this moment of nothing. The only thing I'm aware of is this nothingness and the nature that I have, this awareness that I have. There is a nature that is completely palpable and recognizable, and that nature is cherishing. So my experience of God in the primordial state, in its most fundamental state, is a cherishing awareness. I'm not here inside something that's aware and cherishing. Cherishing awareness is the thing. So as I'm here, there's a movement. There's several parts to the story, and I'm making this very short. There's a movement in this field. And as the field, this godness, this state moves, I'm engorged now. There's this movement of engorging the God source. And as that happens, there's a powerful rising up of the words, I am goodness, and I want to be all that I am. And as those words rise up, I'm just catapulted spectacularly into the beginning of the evolution of my being. So the words themselves were the creative force. It was an impulse, the God impulse. And within me, that impulse to be all that I am is the God impulse. The impulse, that which moves all of life into existence, into moving awareness, dynamic awareness, is cherishing awareness, seeking to be aware of and cherish all there is to be aware of and cherish. It's God seeking to know itself. We are seeking to be all that we are. So that's the background of that. Does that make sense?
Wow. No, that was fabulous. Yeah.
Okay.
Makes lots of sense. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Okay. So I had a question one day about after that experience. I can't do this without really giving the whole context here, Anne. So I'm going to have to read. Is that okay?
Sure. Anything, everything.
Yeah, we're just in for a book reading tonight.
I had said to Mary, I have so much. I said, good luck getting a word in edgewise. I'm just going to read this book to everyone because every page is so good.
If we really are God in expression and God is really cherishing awareness, then how did we evolve to live in total blindness to this truth? The answer to this is revealed one day when I'm pondering the question of how I was able to be propelled so spectacularly into the origins of my evolution with the single original thought, I am goodness, and I want to be all that I am. I grow deeply tired in my pondering and lie down for a nap. As soon as I lie back on my pillow, a gorgeous symmetrical pattern of rotating atom-like energies come before me. The energies are extremely bright, like the glare of sunlight on aluminum, and mirror-like reflective. As I watch these energies move together in various patterns, similar to a kaleidoscope, one core unit moves forward so I can see it in exquisite detail. We're into quantum stuff here now. The center looks like a ring of flower petals rotating counterclockwise. Surrounding these petals are several circular rows of identical square plates, the edge of each slightly propped up on the one on the other beside it. The circular rows of plates are all rotating clockwise. The last plate on the outer circular row is an image of me, happily smiling and waving. I'm going like this in this little scenario. As I take this design in, I can see that I create my perception of physical form through the reflective interactions of the inner petals and the outer plates. It's like bright mirrors moving around each other, creating the perception of light in motion. I can see the energy in the center, the rotation of the reflective flower petal patterns, is the movement created by the thought impulse, which in my original experience was my/God's desire to be. This impulse moves the flower pattern petals to reflect onto the mirrored energies rotating around it, the circular rows of plates. This process of movement, fueled by the original thought impulse, builds hologram-like reflections back and forth, until the reflection finally transmutes my/God's thought into the perception of a thing that is being. Understanding all of this, I realized that the inside flower petal pattern was created by the focus of my original thought. And that focus was, I am goodness. And the circular plate pattern was created by the intention of that same thought. I want to be all that I am. This was the simple formula I experienced for the mechanism of creation. True focus plus true intention equals creation. Do you want me to read more, Anne?
Well, what I want to stop there just for a second and say, I want to read this back. This was the simple formula I experienced for the mechanism of creation, right? True focus plus true intention equals creation.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want to just stop and say right here is what came through our founder, Regina, the way she says this is isness, right? That this life plus utterance equals creation. Equals manifestation. And so you're both seeing the same thing, you're putting different words on it, but it just rings like right here as literally our attention is creative, our focus is creative, it always has been, and that is literally the mechanism of creation. And that allows us to take this to the next step, which is to have, perhaps you can walk us through, whether it's reading or just walking us through, your next step in the book is to walk us through, yes, okay, great. We are focus, I am goodness. And when I focus just on that, I am just goodness. However, when the focus goes to the contrast, we start to create that and believe that is real. And the opposite of that is, or what sneaks into the formula of creation is fear. Is that right?
Yes. When you think about what fear does, so first of all, I should say, if everything that is moving is God, then it's a unitive state of being. It's all oneness. It's all part of the same exact source. It all is the same exact source in different iterations and angles of perception and all this sort of stuff going on. But it's all unified, right? It is a unitive consciousness, if you will, in that state. If you think about what fear does not unite. Fear itself, its nature is to recoil, right? Fear isn't a thing that embraces. Fear is afraid, so it recoils. And this was in our evolution, in my experiences, it was encountering that pattern of fear that recoiled. And it was that first moment of a belief that we're separate from that which we recoil from. we just went right into a separation consciousness. And in that separation consciousness, that then eventually is like focus in on fear, we forget that we begin to believe that we're separate. And I have several chapters in here, beautiful experiences everywhere from Buddha to, again, quantum mechanics, all these things that make us believe that we're separate because we're focused in fear. We're creating from a foundation of fear. It is the way that we're focused. And then our intention is everything based in fear, to keep us safe, to judge what's right or wrong, good or bad, all of these things meant to keep us safe in a fear-based consciousness, which believes it's separate. So there's all of the chapters from part 1 deal with, or the remaining chapters, I should say, deal with that aspect of how we created this perpetuating, this entrenching of this belief deeply. And the more that we went on, the more pain we had, the more yearning we had for deep, profound desire to connect with what's really true for us, our true nature, right? Going back to that piece of, we know that's home, right?
Yeah, and the perpetuation of fear in chapter 5 talks about these deeply layered iterations of fear, and it continues to govern the masses today. And it's driven by this desperate fear that we have been abandoned by God, we've been abandoned by man, each other, and how that was given to Regina was the code, just like in the Matrix. But in your language, it's just simply this this scaffolding, this belief system that just everywhere it's like the petals and the squares and the circles and all that. It's just fear reflecting to fear, and then that becomes its own thing. And then we think we are separate from that. And I guess the line, if you can connect it, is what really struck me is that we identify as the vibration of fear.
Mm.
And when that identification is not seen, well, we can't, it's so innocent. We're going to act from it. If we identify from the vibration of fear, that is going to be the causative, creative energy that we create from and create with. And more of that will be created.
Right. And that's a large part of part 1 is helping us see where all of that association or identification with fear is. Because most people would say, yeah, I have some fear, or I'm afraid of this, but they wouldn't really identify as being fear-based. But, we live in a world where all of our systems are based on mechanisms and foundations of fear, right? And we know this because we keep having to do things against our nature, right? Like we live in systems of inequality. We live in competition and domination and all these ways of having to be worthy of something or achieve, and all of these things that tell us we're not okay right where we are. So it instills in us a fear that we need to keep doing better, or we're not doing things correctly, or and it's in every system, the family systems, the economics, the education, the religious, the governance. It's in all of these systems. So it's the world, it's the infrastructure of our world. It's literally the scaffolding of our world, as well as the scaffolding of our own energetic structure.
Okay, so my sense is now we're to the Mount of Beatitudes. Now we're to page 45. Does that seem right to you?
Sure.
Where we actually look at.
I'm following your lead, babe, wherever you want to go.
Okay.
Now, look, you can tell by the conversation that we've already had that these experiences just are so incredibly vast and conveyed in countless ways. I can talk about the quantum, seeing what's happening at the quantum level. And then I'm going to talk here about, again, going in with Jesus. I said my very first experience was going into the crucifixion. And so the scale of all of these things is just, multidimensional. All right, so I'll just read this really quickly. And this is just a reiteration of how fear lives in us. Although Jesus knew the innocence at the root of our perpetuation of fear-based suffering, even he could not shake our deeply ingrained belief that divine love is something other than ourselves. I experienced this firsthand the day I was swept up in his arms, incorporated into his body, and the two of us became as one, standing on a hillside and looking outward. I realized the location is the Mount of Beatitudes. To the right are people who had earlier gathered to listen to my talk. They're all leaving, and as I watch them walking away, I'm aware that none of these people have taken in my words to live as their own. Instead, they have revered me as Jesus for having said the words. In doing so, they will rely on me for their wisdom rather than fully understanding and embodying the wisdom for themselves. In this way, they have set me, Christ, apart from them. I, Christ, was in the words I spoke, reflecting and illuminating the light within each of them. But because of their blind lack of belief in their own divinity and reverence of me as something special and separate from them, they will remain unaware of Christ within themselves. I, Christ, cannot be realized in their hearts without their will to unite and heal the painful blindness of separation consciousness.
So as I read this, we were in the midst of this last week, we did a retreat called Being in the World But Not of It, Embodying Truth. And it just really hit. It is our intention, it is our will, our surrender is absolutely essential to this process. We have to be willing, to not just realize this, but to give ourselves over to living as this, to being this, not just, kind of spectating or even understanding it. Mm-hmm. Understanding is important, but it's that living of it. And that's what your next chapters talk about. So let me just
say there's sort of two aspects to that process, to that evolution of us being able to surrender, right? And part of it is the letting go of the old conditioned beliefs, those things that we're tethered to, those beliefs that we've bought into or created and then held on to in our lives. So the process of letting go of those, as we are also allowing in the higher perspectives, right? And so that both are happening at this time simultaneously. And it's a process of relaxing. This is what meditation does. It relaxes the mind. It lets us, for just a little bit, allow some space in, and then we have availability to these higher energies, these higher perspectives that can come in. Just wanted to put that in there.
Yeah, no, that's really the Angela DeLulo, another teacher we've been reading lately. It's the unbinding process, but it's a process because it's bound in there, but it seems like is it just grace? I mean, it seems like there's just a point where something has to let go. And let it be done.
Everybody's at different stages. Everybody has things that they came in with, things that they're seeking to learn or seeking to teach through their continued experiences. So for everyone, it's going to be different. For example, in my own life journey, I had a really powerful, strong mind. I had very big work in my clinical research, and I was a global program director in Africa, and I had lots and lots and lots of pieces. So I had a very strong mind, and I had a very strong mind about what I thought I was supposed to be doing, what I thought I was good at, and what I thought was normal. So there was a lot that needed to be shifted in my world and in my understanding for me to be able to surrender to the mystical path. And so for me, my path needed to be so devastating, there was nothing else to grasp onto from that old way of being. Now, for some people, it doesn't have to be that severe. They can have a more graceful kind of entry into, just feeling like the time is right to transition out of these old paradigms of work or family or models or whatever. And so, so that's all to say that we all have different ways that we're, going about the journey. So it's not, for some it is an act of grace, for some it's a divine timing thing that was sort of built into where their life was going to need to go, or like everybody's paths are different where that goes, where that's, yeah.
And we're trusting that because we are that, and we're just letting go of these beliefs that we're not that, we're just trusting that what we are, the truth of what we are, is just going to kind of guide us through guidance, through those internal prompts, what to do, how to let go, how to relax into
Yeah,
this.
well, as the more that we let in and the more that we let go of, we begin to see the evidence of the well-being that we feel, the relief that we feel, the understandings that we suddenly have, the realizations, the capabilities that we suddenly have, because loads and loads and loads of people, and those who are on here in my community know this very well. As we continue to let go of a lot of these old tetherings, suddenly we're realizing that we have a lot more capability to access wisdom in lots of different ways. Our awareness can shift around in lots of different ways, and many of us are learning that. So we begin to see the evidence, and the more that we begin to feel better, that we see healing, that we experience new things, we begin to trust more and more and more in that path, because it just keeps being evidential again and again and again.
Yeah, evidential and directly experienced.
Yeah.
So here's where I'd love to go next, which is I have written down page 78, which is the work of the universe. So, but I don't need to direct you right there. It's like where we are right now, and that chapter on the work of the universe just really sets the stage for what I know my work is, and what you're showing us all of our work is. And so perhaps I'll get you to.
I don't want to say a lot. So chapters 12 and 13 are the anchoring, like crescendo parts for part 1. And they really are the basis for understanding where we are now and what we're waking up into. And in all of my 23 years of metaphysical experiences and these channel teachings, this is the pivotal event. And it was an event that came about in 2016, over the winter of 2016. And it involved the fundamental block in humanity. And I experienced it within me, the fundamental block within me, and this block within the cosmos, all of the cosmos. And I was well aware that this is the fundamental issue. And in this experience, which was gigantic, at one point, all of the atoms and molecules of the cosmos filled up with divine presence. And they were all magnificently serious. And talking about this fundamental block, they said, this is the work of the universe. There's this work, and all other work falls away. And so it was understanding basically the emptiness of this block, that it's all based on a belief. It's all fundamentally, and this line is repeated in different experiences throughout part 1. It's fundamentally built on a belief that we're separate from God, that God is an other. And so all of the ways that we've created this separation consciousness, and how to fundamentally address that. And without giving a lot away for these 2 chapters, I will just say that the nature of this block that I was experiencing. Now, remember, I said that I can go into the blackboard and become the lesson itself. And that's what happened in this. But what I became in this experience was absolutely every single thing in humanity that we call bad. Every single thing that we consider bad. Fear, anger, rage, poverty, rape, war, violence, you name it, I became it. And I became what all of it is, what it's all originating from. I became also the profound sorrow and sadness that it all is, because it is all various iterations of the pain we experience because we believe we're separate from God. And our constant crying out for union with God. It is these two things simultaneous, based in that single belief. So there's a whole, what unfolded took day and night for several days to really address everything. But that was the fundamental core of it. And in seeing all the ways that we have dynamics set up in our world about how we treat what we call bad, and one of the things I talk about in here is when we think we're using goodness, our goodness, I am goodness, when we think that we're using that goodness as love to make our bad go away, what we're really doing is employing a mechanism of trying to get one part of us to make another part of us go away. And you'll notice that we can't. We've never been able to make the bad in the world go away. Nothing that you see in our world today just started. We just keep recycling it again and again and again. And the reason is this bad it's all pain. And that pain is our cry for union. So when we're trying to make it go away, we're not answering the cry. So we're stuck in this cycle that we've been stuck in for all this time, when we think we're doing the loving thing by trying to conquer that bad, by trying to make it go away. What we're doing is actually recreating more pain. So we just keep getting stuck in this cycle. So the last chapter in part 1 talks about they call it like, they address that block. You can imagine it like a soap bubble. It's that simple. You just pierce the boundaries of that block and then everything is just absorbed into the divine energies that are already here within it. And it talks about how to do that. And that understanding is the work of the universe.
And yeah, this is such a gorgeous chapter. I love when you said it's like, when you're talking about the sorrow that humanity carries from this cycle. It's like watching fish swim around sorrowfully, yearning to know water. It just need to know water, and they're just completely swim. And I loved when you talked about that the piercing is our work, and the piercing is recognizing it, yes, with our focus, with our attention, and kind of giving ourselves to that. Is that, I mean, that's my words, but how would you articulate?
Well, ultimately, we're giving the secret away here, but
okay.
ultimately the work is to, at a pure level, get ourselves in alignment with what we truly are, with our divine nature, with that love that we're crying out for, get ourselves in direct alignment with God. And so there's a series of statements that I make in this experience while I'm in the metaphysical experience, and I make them very vehemently. I'm just like absolute about them. And there's like 4 of them that I say just really powerfully and truthfully. And the moment that I hit it, the moment that I hit that mark, then everything completely opened up, and it all started flowing in a very even deeper levels of profundity that involved all the pain in the collective of humanity forever. And so it's really an extraordinary experience. And a lot of people talk to me about that particular chapter, that it's just like so many things open up in their understanding through that chapter, through that experience.
And aligning the languaging we put on that here in Awakening Together is that we shift from the head, all the what wants and the desires and the don't wants and the don't desires, to the heart, and we get in touch with our spiritual aspiration. We get in touch with the true desire of the heart. And then we literally, from there, rest the thoughts, accept the feelings, and trust that that's our work. So it's this just non-judgmental awareness. And we are literally, we're not pushing it away, and we're not doing it. It's not transactional. We're not doing it to get rid of it. It may leave, but that's not the motive. The motive, as you said, is to get really purely aligned with what it is, with that yearning, that yearning for union.
I teach a lot, and Consensus teaches a lot about that this is all about the embrace, right? So in those vehement statements that I'm making, I'm talking about whatever rises up in my field, I will include here as part of me. I will not oppress or resist. It's free to be whatever it is, because our cycle of bad is to try to reject it, try to have it be something else and not accept it as it is. And we're called so powerfully to embrace every speck of our pain as it is, because what it's asking for is to be embraced in the field of love. So we are to be that field. So our work is to say, come in. It's all within here, and surrender to the allowance of letting it all experience its remembrance of home. That we are the home in which everything can return.
Wow. I could just rest right there. So let me shift just for a minute and ask if anyone has a question, if they could use their electronic hand, which under reactions, you could just say, you could click on raise hand, and we'll be able to see that. And if I miss it, sign it will let me know. So what you just iterated so beautifully, thank you, is kind of where we've been, and that this is kind of the call. And there was a line in here where you said, I understand, I have homework to do. And when I read that section, I felt like, okay, I understand, I have homework to do. It just resonated so clearly. And what you put such a fine point on for me, that like I had seen, but I had never seen it as clearly. We were talking about this in the breakout room, is pain comes up, and no matter how kind of clear I am that I want to heal it, internally there's this rejection mechanism. There's this, oh no, there's this clench. And I can see that my work is to notice that even subtler and subtler, so that I can welcome that. So I can even welcome the internal clench that is residual or fear or subtle, whatever it is, and let that be met. Let that be rested with.
My guides Consensus have a beautiful teaching that's included in the Divine New Being course and the book called the Heart Lullaby. And they talk about guiding everybody into calling forward those things that you call the clench things, really calling them forward and breathing them into the heart. And as you do, feeling that movement is like a lullaby, just soothing that pain, soothing. You see, there's all these ways of nurturing and caring for these pieces of us that deeply yearn to be embraced, right? So finding all of these different ways to experientially, viscerally do this without engaging the mind. This is what Consensus always says about, this is not the path of effort at all. It's the path of ease. It's about settling in and just finding all of these ways within us for everything to come into this flow, and particularly flow through the heart. So that heart lullaby is one of my favorite ones in terms of taking care of specifically those pieces of us that still feel difficult.
And sounds to me like that is a kind of intuitive, as you said, just a relaxing, a letting go, trust you'll be guided, trust you'll be shown what there is to.
Yes, but it's also an intention. Remember what we're doing here. While we are relaxing and we are allowing, we are also outwardly, overtly intending to take care of things within us. We are intentionally saying to these pieces of you, yes, darling, come on in. Yes, darling, that I know that doesn't feel good. Let's just do this. Let's feel this soothing. Let's feel this melody just for you, just for a bit. The heart, it's one of the favorite teachings in the course. Any of my community who's done the Divine New Being course could say that. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, no, wonderful.
I was
say
going to
thank.
call on Carol and then I
Yeah.
remembered.
Oh, no, absolutely. You go right ahead. You go right ahead and call on Carol.
As both in your community, Mary, and as the minister in the Center for Conscious Living when you came in 2016, and then later as well, I remember you doing this meditation with us, and you were suggesting, anything in the collective. If it pick something, is it fear? Is it shame? Is it whatever it is? Let that energy have a place to rest in your heart for a few minutes. It's so needed. We can't solve it all, right? But it's let it in and let it, and it was beautiful and profound. And I thank you for staying here.
I find that, I still do these things myself as well. Anytime that I feel things rise up that feel difficult, it's just easy and natural now to just drop in and let it feel the soothing that I intend in my heart, not the, here we go again, that kind of stuff that we're used to, or making excuses for it, or pretending it doesn't exist, right? We have all of these sort of workarounds that we do. And this I find it just induces peace and it facilitates healing at the same time. Thank you, Carol.
Beautiful. So we are to where we've been and then where we are now. And I thought maybe I can get you to read the top of 113, just that first paragraph. It seems to kind of give us some context for where we are now.
Okay, so let me just say that part 2, in talking about where we are, I talk a lot about the consciousness. And the first part, I talk about a bunch of experiences that came through, helping me really look at the I am. There's all of these experiences about the I am consciousness, the greater I am here through me. And then we move into a section called We Are. And that's what she wants me to read here. What do you want me to read, darling?
Just the first paragraph.
Okay. Among the countless realizations I've had along this awakening journey, one in particular took me a very long time to understand because I had no frame of reference for it. We are not evolving out of separation consciousness on our own. We are doing this, must inherently do this together. Our awakening has to happen in union with others because what we're evolving into is ever more realization of our oneness.
Yeah, as I read this, we are awakening together, which is the name of this. And it seems like one of the great insights you came to is that we aren't just awakening together. We must inherently awaken together.
Yeah.
Get you to talk about that a little bit.
Well, when you think about what we are, right? If we're just God through these vessels, if we're the expression, like there's one of my, I don't know if I talk about it in Humanity's Epic Awakening, but I do talk about it in Unwitting Mystic, which is an experience of being shown. I'm like this body projected into this reality. But I can see what my true nature is, that there's this huge consciousness, and I'm just an aspect of it that's like projected into here through a body. And I say, I have a body because that's what people can understand. That's what people can make sense of and concretize. But I'm actually part of this huge consciousness. So when you think about, us beginning to experience in this earthly realm more and more aspects of our capabilities as this greater consciousness, we can, move around in different ways. So we begin to share consciousness between people, among people, like it begins to happen and between dimensions as well, which was what always happens in metaphysical experiences. We're sharing consciousness across dimensional realms. So we begin to do that here in this realm, in this, and I have several chapters that really talk about that beautifully and unexpectedly, about how things, even beyond my intention, it's just happening because that's what consciousness itself, awareness itself is doing and guiding me to realize that this is one of the possibilities and capabilities that we have. It's one of many. It's one of infinite.
Wonderful. Yeah, and so the more we're kind of letting go of what's not true, the more we're putting attention on our true nature, we're kind of becoming more and more empty, and then the light of consciousness can see itself the way its divine intention is to see itself, and it moves us, moves as us, I think you can say.
Yeah, and it moves among us, right? So there's, there's a whole thing in here about, there's a whole chapter that I talk about perceiver and that which we perceive, right? That it's all one, but it's just different angles of perception that's going on. So when you think about that, perception can happen in multiple ways. It can also happen between people, seeing people in conscious states differently. So this beginning of this chapter, chapter 16, that first paragraph that I just read, is about me going completely into somebody else's body and experiencing being them before I get to where they are. And I'm experiencing everything. I'm in them. I am them in a very extraordinary way. And that was the first time ever that I had the experience of shared consciousness. I've had many shared consciousness experiences since then, but anyway.
And so there's a third section of the book, which is where we're going.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm happy that we still have time. We did that, but I would just love to open this right up to you guiding us to whatever is most alive for us to absorb.
In part 3?
Yeah, in part 3.
Well, I think that I really like to read the experience of the end of hell, because it was the first one that I experienced that was, really profoundly helping me understand just about what we're waking up into. But before we do, I want to read a poem that introduces part 3. Now, in this book, there's also poetry throughout by Shalane Harkin. We're dear friends, and she's a beautiful mystic poet. If you don't know her work, I highly recommend it.
Forgive me for jumping in. We had her as a Satsang guest.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
And she was, of course, the fabulous Shalane that she is. And so we are familiar, and many of us read her often. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, when I asked her, because these are, as you can tell, these are very big experiences, and I wanted something between chapters that could just be a moment of a breath, sort of centering someone in a particular vibration, and then continue on. So I asked Shalane if I could use her poetry between my chapters, just snippets, and then full poems at the beginning and end of each section. And she texted me back, all capital letters, "Fuck yeah." So,
that sounds about right.
So I'm going to read her poem that introduces where we're going. Some of you may already know this. Things are about to get interesting. Things are about to get interesting. The more you open to the light of the wild sun, the more motivated she'll be to pour her golden drink upon you. You think your life was crazy now? Just wait until you let love in. You think she'll bring a sip of holy wine to your lips, but she'll pop the cork right off this world and intoxicate all existence. Surround yourself with people who have already been brave enough to yank their souls from the straitjackets of their buds and let the blossom of their freak flags fly. You will need this encouragement, because things are about to get interesting. What used to be your reverent postures will madly start trying to pull God into your body. All of your grounded words will turn into swooping birds of unpredictable poetry, and all your polite ways will become true maniacs for love. Are you sure you're ready to turn your respectable life into a wild parade? Perhaps consider this before you pray like that again. Okay, I'm going to read this full chapter. And you will have to pardon me if I become emotional. That's what happened last weekend when I read this, because sometimes when I'm reading, I'm re-experiencing what's happening. And this one was a doozy. As mentioned previously, our awakening momentum is as much a creative process as it is a destructive one. Both of these aspects of transformation contribute to the confusion and mayhem inherent in large-scale change. While this confusion and mayhem will continue and even intensify for some as our fear-based consciousness doubles down on its effort to survive, we will, in fact, soon begin to realize a reality far easier than what we've ever known before. And that reality will be known in large part by all that is ending. Over the years, I've experienced many large-scale endings in the ethereal energetic fields that are making their way into the incarnate field of humanity. It's like I encounter stars whose bright lights are still a few years from arriving in our awareness. And when that light finally reaches all of us, we will realize that its glow will now always occupy spaces where darkness used to be. One of the most profound and emotional ending experiences I have had began when, in a meditation with my friend Corrine, I suddenly entered into a realm that would traditionally be considered hell. The feeling here is solely in alignment with the archetypal representation of the realm of hell. There's no pain, no fear, none of that. I'm simply to understand the presence of this realm. Before me are black-cloaked beings with their backs to me, lined up on risers like a choir. They're all reaching out for something. There's a palpable feel of a healing potential present in this moment, and every being here is seeking something in anticipation. The beings begin to stomp their feet in revolt. They will no longer be patient. They demand the healing. This is their revolutionary moment. Shortly, a red-cloaked being, the classic archetype of the devil, appears in the back of the room holding a scepter. He walks up through a middle passageway dividing the risers, stops at the front of the room, then turns to face the black-cloaked beings with his scepter raised. After a moment, the devil slams the scepter down with a powerful thud and says, "The time has come." He closes his eyes and surrenders. Instantly, every single black-cloaked being in the risers melts and disappears. I feel a massive swell of relief rise up within all of humanity, and I become overwhelmed, heaving tears. Through my tears, I see what happens next and utter, "Oh my God." I watch in shock as the color begins to drain from the devil's red cloak and from the devil himself. His entire being shifts into a blend of luxurious colors that get brighter and lighter, until finally everything is exquisite, transparent light. Now, where the archetype of the devil once stood, there is only the presence of God. I look around me and the entire space has changed. The risers are gone and there's simply a vast empty room. It's not as though the risers or black-cloaked characters or the devil will be replaced by something else. The entire space becomes an abandoned space that is no longer needed. The realm of hell is no longer needed. The very idea of hell is no longer needed. I'm filled with deep emotion as the experience ends because I'm fully embodied with what is in store for humanity. Afterwards, still in tears, I say to Corrine, "It's a shame I can't share with the world the feeling of dissolving the realm of hell or the experience of witnessing the disillusion of the devil to reveal God. The world would heal in an instant. All the ancient beliefs tethered to the idea or philosophy of hell would dissolve in an instant."
Mm. Thank you. So I have a question which feels a little mundane, and yet it's here to ask. What does that feel like to allow, to watch, to stay present, so acutely alert and present in the presence, well, not just in the presence of, but in the presence as,
Yeah, in the being of.
in the
Not
being
even
of.
so much about me being present, because I'm just it. There's
Yeah.
not an intention to
Yeah.
be present in it. I'm already it. And it feels unfathomable. There are many experiences in here. You've read it all, so you know there are just astounding experiences. That one we talked about, the fundamental block in humanity. I mean, the scale is just unfathomable. And when this experience happened, and what I began to really cry about last Saturday when reading this is when there were two moments in that just were just so unbelievably relieving to me and gorgeous to me. One was feeling the massive relief within humanity. And even as I'm saying this, I'm feeling very teary. When you know the scale of the suffering, not just the current scale, but our history. When you've embodied this whole continuum and you see just the scale of what is happening and what we're waking up into, what's coming, the scale of the relief. It's so incredible. And also this idea of the devil itself, where the devil stood, is now this glorious light of God. You just see everything so in its truth, right? How we make things, these bad, these evils or whatever, by our beliefs in them. And the moment the belief is gone and we don't have that dynamic of good and bad, we have God in its various forms. It's just the most exquisite healing truth. Like, you can't get a greater healing of truth than watching the devil turn into its truth as God. Like, it's the fundamental part of our suffering, is that we believe there's bad in the world, that there's an evil, right? And the devil is the ultimate archetypal representation of that. And to watch all of that instantly stop, and then the truth come about, and then this realization that the very idea of hell is no longer needed. We will no longer learn through that lens. I mean, it's really, you can see why this all ended up in a suicide attempt. You can see as I'm walking through life, and I'm first of all trying to still be a global program director and healthcare executive and doing all this big stuff, and I have all of this in me. And I don't have anybody who can help me. And it's like, it's a devastating and gloriously beautiful experiences, for sure.
So let me pause and see if anyone has any questions. Reverend Carol, wonderful.
Do we go to 8 o'clock or 8:30, or I don't know how?
Oh, you're 8 o'clock. Yeah, we go 10 more minutes.
All right.
Or 9 o'clock.
Then I'm looking at these chapter titles in the part 3 about the end of opposing sides, the end of effort, the end of the conquering game, the end of inadequacy, the end of separation. And I'm saying those out loud because I know there isn't time to talk about them all. But in this, which I just finished this afternoon, I mean, there's, so much anyway, but you talk about how having the intention to think about the new, to intend to sing about it, to look toward it, and maybe some few words on what that is for us.
As a whole, you mean?
I have no idea what I mean. I'm just even just reading it, that pick anyone or see where you're guided, but there's change coming that we're being asked to embody and think about and welcome.
Yes.
And I thought that might be good for us to know.
So, there's all kinds of the things that you just read, the end of the conquering game, the end of separation, the end of opposing sides, the end of ancient elders. There's all kinds of things in here that are surprises about what's ending. But we have ways to understand, for example, the end of inadequacy, right? There's a mass consciousness in inadequacy that we're conditioned to believe that we have to be better, be more. Like, we have a whole education system built on this, right? We're graded if we don't succeed. We're in business, we always trying to do better, we're promoted and all this sort of stuff. So that we have all of these ingrained ways in us that we can recognize a consciousness of inadequacy. We have, in here, the end of separation. I've just spent a whole book talking about separation consciousness. We have things that we can understand, but we also have things in here. First of all, this isn't all of my experiences in any section of this. There are many more experiences that I did not put in here, including where we're going. But I just chose key ones that can give us a really fundamental feeling and understanding about the scale of all the healing. And as we do that, more and more and more alignment with our true nature, right? Alignment with divine love. But I want to read one that I read last weekend too, because I think it's really powerful to show something that we can actually imagine happening in our collective. And this is the end of the conquering game. Do anybody know what chapter that is?
Yeah, that's chapter 30, page 221.
Thank you. I'm just going to read this quickly. And then if it's okay, I would like for us to settle in the final energy with Shalann's last poem, because I think it's really...
That's exactly what I had tabbed.
Okay, perfect. It's just a perfect note. I'm just going to read here quickly the end of the conquering game. Related to both the end of opposing sides and the end of the game of effort, one morning I woke from a deep sleep, being pulled into a simple paradigm shift that will have a massive influence on the world. I travel with humanity in a progression from competition to collaboration, from my life to all of life consciousness, and from narrow role playing to vast exploration of our human potential. All of this is transpiring as I embody a new model of how we play games. We develop games where the objective is to help the other person or team win. The goal is twofold: creativity and depth of impact for others. We use our individual and collective skills, intellect, and imagination. Everyone can play and no one can lose. We also develop games that have multiple decision trees. Each decision shows varying paths that reflect the potential for individual experience and collective impact. One can thereby explore ever more possibilities of life at micro and or macro levels. Decisions that limit personal or collective growth lead to a stage where alternative decisions must be made in order to advance. The more one discovers the greatest potential for individuals and the collective, the more points one wins. These games change not just our motivation, but our way of thinking. They spark our curiosity to be differently. thereby creating a different world as they illuminate and reward recognition of our interconnectedness. They dramatically alter our ideas of success and purpose, making obsolete the old conquering good trumps bad models of entertainment, education, governance, and spirituality. They break the cycle of conditioned belief in limitation and set us free to explore all of who we are as possibility-filled individuals, populating our everything is possible humanity. So when you see that start to come on the market, remember you heard it here.
Amen.
All right, shall I close with this poem? So why don't we just take a minute here, if it's okay, to really settle into just a moment of relaxing into the feeling of receiving all that has been shared this evening into our beings, letting it come in and touch the places in us that recognize and remember our truth in these various ways. And let us feel the blessing of being able to do this together, to amplify the experience of the transmission and the field that we all occupy in a sincere desire to be of service to ourselves, to each other, and to all of the collective and our divine family. And as we're feeling the energy of all we've been receiving, we'll close with these words here. Make your love visible. God had a great secret that she couldn't keep. And one day her heart exploded with a big bang. Her inability to contain herself became galaxies. She poured her heart out and it slowly began sorting itself out into the universe. She spilled the beans, the stars, so completely her repressed blushing became sunsets. She whispered her secret music into the heart of every atom, and the electrons could not help but giddily dance. All creation became a chatterbox, gossiping to each other non-stop about the wild, loving mysteries she'd shared with them. Evolution was what happened as the story of ecstatic wonderment was passed through life from ear to ear, changing slightly with each iteration. She set truth to dancing with the whirl of her planets and kissed the nucleus of everything with her only real ordinance. Make your love visible. And I want to thank you for having me here tonight.
Oh my goodness.
Inviting my
Well,
community to join. And if anybody is interested in
yes, please tell us.
you can check out lovemaryreed.com. You can join my community through my website there. There's different levels and benefits for different things. We have Sunday evening satsangs. They're all recorded and you can watch them if you aren't able to join us live. They're all available in archives. We also gather on Wednesdays for book readings. Right now we're actually reading my book together. We just finished Paul Selig's Resurrection a few weeks ago. And then on Thursdays, we gather to replay for those who are enrolled in the Divine New Being course. So we have different, things that we do together. And every week when we gather, all of the teachings are channeled. They come through consensus. So we all gather and allow consensus to come through us as a collective field for the teachings every week. So you're more than welcome to check out that and any other offerings that I have.
Mary, you are a gift, and we are all a gift to each other, and you are a gift to us. And I love you dearly. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you to all of you. It's so good to see you. Thank you for inviting me here. Namaste.
Namaste. Hari Om. Hari Om.
Our time together will be of benefit to all beings.
So it is. Thank you.
Thank you for watching our satsang. We hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to join us live, please remember you can do so by visiting our website, awakening-together.org. We'd love to see you in the sanctuary. Again, our website is awakening-together.org. Remember to click the bell for more notifications and subscribe.